They say the most dangerous moments don't come with warning signs. They don't kick the door open or scream in your face. They slip in quietly, through laughter, through kindness, through someone asking if you're okay when no one else has. I wish I could say, I didn't see it coming, but the truth is, I felt it in the way he looked at me, like I was still someone worth looking at. In the way he lingered in the doorway, just a little too long, in the way I didn't stop. It happened in my own house, in my living room on a Thursday afternoon, while my husband was out of town, and his best friend, his childhood friend, the man who stood beside him at our wedding. He was sitting on our couch, and he wanted to watch, and I let him not, because I planned to not, because I was trying to hurt anyone, but because, for the first time in a very long time, I felt seen. Let me back up. This story isn't about lust, it's about something deeper. Loneliness, neglect, the slow ache of being invisible in your own marriage, of sleeping next to someone who doesn't even turn toward you anymore, of laughing alone at your own jokes because he's too busy, too tired, too distant. So when someone else sees you, really sees you, it does something to you. You start remembering who you used to be. You start craving warmth, like it's oxygen. And before you know it, you're standing at the edge of a decision you never thought you'd make it started. Off innocent. We were just watching a movie, something light popcorn, between us, jokes, here and there. But the air felt heavy, like something unspoken was floating in the space between the TV and his silence. I don't even remember the scene on screen, but I remember the way he looked at me, like he could see every crack in me and didn't flinch, like he was asking question without moving his lips. I could have walked away. I could have closed the door. I could have picked up my phone and called my husband, but I didn't, because sometimes the most dangerous thing isn't the lie you tell someone else, it's the lie you tell yourself, that it's harmless, that it's just this once, that it doesn't mean anything, but it did. It meant everything. And what happened next? It changed me. It changed the way I saw my husband. It changed the way I saw myself. And it broke something that I'm still trying to put back together. If you've ever felt lonely inside our relationship, if you've ever questioned a moment that felt too intimate to ignore, this story is for you. Subscribe to Heartfelt Tales. Unfold where silence speaks louder than words. You won't believe what happens next, because what started as a joke turned into a silence I've never been able to shake, and that moment, it still lives in me quietly, dangerously, like it's waiting to happen. Again, I'm 33, been married for 9 years, and for a while it was good, not perfect, but good. The kind of love that made sense, steady, safe, solid. We had plans, we built a life, and somewhere in the middle of all that building, I think we forgot how to look at each other. My husband's name is Dale. He works in tech, always busy, always tired, always somewhere else. The last few years, I've seen more of his back than his face. He leaves early, comes home late, and when he's here, he's not even. Our conversations feel like business meetings. Did you pay the light bill? What's the plan for the kids? School fees? Remind me to call my mum. We sleep in their same bed, but it's cold. Not physically, but emotionally. That space between us, it might as well be another country. And then there's Tond. He's Deo's oldest friend. Grew up together. Same secondary school. Same university. He was the best man at our wedding. Charming, funny, the kind of man who makes everyone feel seen, even strangers. The kind of man who notices when your hair changes, or when your smile doesn't quite reach your, as he started coming around more after Deo's job got even busier, dropping off stuff, checking in, saying things like, "You all right?" but not the casual kind, the kind that actually waits for an answer. I didn't think much of it. At first, he was just a friend, a familiar face, a safe one, but Tund had this way of lingering just a beat longer than necessary. His eyes would rest on me, but not in a way that made me shrink, in a way that made me feel like I was still here, still visible. He'd crack a joke, and when I laughed, he'd hold my gaze, not to be inappropriate, just too long to be innocent, too soft to be brotherly. And when he'd leave, I'd stand at the door a little too long, watch his tail, lights fade like someone losing something. They weren't supposed to want our home looks perfect. From the outside, 2 Tory clean lawn photos on the wall, laughter cotton picture frames. But inside it's quiet, heavy. Everything feels unfinished, like a conversation that was cut off mid-sentence and never resumed. I stopped. Dressing up stopped bothering. With makeup stopped asking Deo to notice me, because the silence that followed hurt more than his indifference, and Tund he filled in that silence. Without even trying, he asked questions Deo stopped asking. He remembered things my own husband forgot. He made the house fearless. Cold looking back, I can't even tell you the moment things shifted. It wasn't own big moment. It was 100 small owns, each one harmless on its own, but together they became something I couldn't ignore. Tund never crossed the lines, never said the words, but everything about the way he looked at me told me he was waiting for something. And the scariest part, so was I. It was a Saturday, cloudy, quiet. Deo had traveled the night before, another conference, another reason not to be here. I didn't even see him off. We barely said goodbye. The house felt colder than usual that morning. I tried to keep busy, laundry, dishes, a little work, but everything felt still, like the walls were holding their breath. By afternoon, I was curled up on the couch, half watching something on Netflix I'd already seen. Then my phone buzzed. Tund. Yeah, I hesitated. Then I typed, yeah, and almost instantly, he replied, cool. I'm around the area. Just checking in. 10 minutes later, he was at my door, same easy smile, same casual energy, but there was something in his eyes. I couldn't place it. Soft, curious, quiet. We sat in the living room, me on the couch, him in the armchair. He brought snacks, 2 bottles of malt, said he was bored, said he figured I might be too. And he wasn't wrong. We put on a movie, something romantic, but not overly cheesy. The kind you don't really have to watch, you just let it play in the background. While you talk, we laughed, talked about old music, old memories, stories from uni days. It was easy too. Easy. Then about halfway through the movie, shifted the tone, changed the characters. On screen were touching, kissing, breathing each other in, not rushed, slow, intimate. And that's when I felt it. The shift in the room is stopped laughing. He stopped talking, and for a while the only sound was the movie. I could feel his eyes on me, not glancing, not stealing a peek, just watching. Me watching the screen. I didn't move. I didn't look at him, but I felt it, that kind of attention that burns through silence, like someone's hand resting on your skin, even when it's not. My heart was loud, not fast, but loud, heavy. Each beat felt like a question. I didn't want to answer. Still he didn't say a word, didn't shift, didn't reach for me. But he didn't look away either. And May could have turned, could have said something stupid to break the tension, could have grabbed the remote and changed the movie. But I didn't. I just sat there, frozen, aware, alive, and for the first time in a long time, I wasn't numb, felt wanted. Not with words, not with hands, but with eyes that saw every part of me. And didn't flinch. The scene ended. The movie moved on, but we stayed. The stuck in that moment that never really left the room. I should have looked away, too, but I didn't. That night I couldn't sleep. I laid there in the bed. I shared with my husband, the one that always felt too big when he was gone. I stared at the ceiling, playing the movie over in my head, not the one we watched, the one that played out between us, me and Tund. Thessalence the glances, the heat. I tried to endure, and I kept asking myself, why did I enjoy it? Why did it feel like I had been waiting for that moment? Why did something as small as being seen, really seen, hit me so deeply? It wasn't even physical. He didn't touch me, didn't say a single wrong word. He just looked, but that look, it peeled something open, in method I thought was gone, buried dead. It's been years since Deo last looked at me like that, years since he complimented anything other than my cooking years, since his hand brushed my back without purpose, or his lips touched mine without obligation. I used to dress up for him, just to see his eyes light up. Now I dress for errands, for comfort, because what's the point? Teen's gaze reminded me of something I'd forgotten, that I'm still a woman, still desirable, still breathing. I kept telling myself it was just a look. He didn't do anything. I didn't do anything. It was harmless. But then why couldn't I stop thinking about it? Why did it replay every time I closed my eyes? And why did I dream about him that night? It wasn't even sexual. It was slower, more intimate. Him standing behind me in the kitchen, brushing something off my shoulder, smiling, laughing at something I said, looking at me like I was the only person in the world. I woke up breathless, flushed, guilty, guilt-like, a hand around my throat, not choking me, just reminding me that it was there. I told myself I'd forget that it was nothing, that it would pass. But the truth, that moment had already taken root, and no matter how hard I tried to bury it, it was growing. After that day, something shifted. Ton started coming around more often, not in a way that was obvious, just enough to notice, enough to feel. He dropped by with something small planned, in chips, a new playlist to charger. I didn't ask for. He always had a reason, but I knew better, and so did he. It was never awkward. Not exactly, if anything. It felt too natural. Like we had silently agreed not to talk about what happened during the movie. But it hung there in the air, in the pauses, in the way he looked at me and didn't rush to look away. Sometimes when he walked past me, his hand would graze my back, light, barely a touch, but enough to make me hold my breath. Once I reached for a Mugat, the same time he did, his fingers brushed mine. We both froze just for a second. He smiled. I didn't, I couldn't, because every time he touched me, no matter how lightly it felt, like a door cracking open that I wasn't ready to walk through, but also couldn't seem to close. One evening it rained. Dale was out of town again. Ton texted, "You good?" I said, "Yes." He showed up anyway. We sat in the living room, the sound of rain tapping the windows, and he opened a bottle of red wine he'd brought. We didn't talk about the wine, or the fact that it was already past 900 p.m., or why the lights stayed dim. We just sat and laughed too easily. He said something funny. I don't even remember what, and I threw my head back, laughing harder than I had in months. When I looked at him again, he wasn't laughing. He was watching me, soft, steady, hungry. And then he said, "It's so casual," like a joke he already knew. The weight of what would your husband say if he knew I was here, like this? It froze. The room suddenly felt too quiet, too full. I opened my mouth and nothing came out, just a nervous laugh, a half-hearted shrug. But I didn't ask him to leave. I didn't tell him he shouldn't be there, because the truth was, I wanted him there. And I think he knew, because right after he leaned back and said, "Can I tell you something?" I nodded. He took a sip of his wine, eyes on mine. Then he said it, soft, deliberate. "I've always wondered what it would be like to just watch you. I laughed. I had to, because if I didn't laugh, I would have had to feel what he just said, really feel it, and I wasn't ready for that. But he didn't laugh. He just kept looking at me, like he meant every word. I looked away, pretended to check my phone, said something about how late it was, but neither of us moved. Neither of us stood, and in that silence, everything between us got louder. It was Thursday night. The house was still, quiet in the way that makes your skin feel too loud. Deo was out of town, again Abuja this time. He'd left that morning, another client, another meeting, another excuse by 8 Pulse P. The power flickered off for a moment, then came back. I lit a few candles, not because I had to, but because I wanted the house to feel warm for once. Not cold, not empty, just warm. I took a long bath, tied my robe. Nothing fancy, just soft familiar, the kind. A robe that makes you feel like you're still someone in your own body. Around 8:30. My phone buzzed. Tunned at the message. For a while. I didn't reply. But 20 minutes later, he was at the door. I opened it. He didn't say much, just smiled. Held up a small bag with chocolate and pineapple juice. Your favorites, he said. We sat in the living room again. Dim lighting, the flicker of candles dancing on the walls. No TV, no music, just the sound of the clock and our breathing. I sat on the couch. He sat in the armchair. The same arrangement as always, but nothing felt the same. We didn't talk. There was nothing left to say. Every word felt like it would ravel something we'd spent weeks pretending didn't exist. His eyes moved, slow. Deliberate, from the candle to my legs to my face, and I didn't look away. I stood up, didn't explain, didn't check if he was following me. I walked down the hall, my robe brushing against my skin like a whisper, the air thick behind me, heavy with the weight of everything unspoken. I reached the bedroom door, paused, my hand on the knob. Then I opened, but not all the way. Just enough, just wide enough, and I left it like that. The hallway light stretched into the room, like a question I didn't want answered. I didn't turn to see if he followed. I didn't need to. I felt it, the sound of the door creaking open a little further, the shift in air as he stepped inside, the softness of the carpet beneath. Careful feet. I didn't speak. I didn't move. I just stood by the bed, back turned, heartbeat loud, breath shaky. I felt his presence near, still he watched. And I let him, not out of spite, not out of lust, but because I was tired of being invisible, tired of being nothing more than someone's afterthought, tired of not feeling alive. His gaze wasn't harsh. It didn't burn, it held me, told me I was still someone, still worth watching. When I finally turned around, he was gone, just like that. No touch, no word, no goodbye. Just the soft click of the front door as it closed behind him, and me standing there, robed, exposed, still. And when it was over, I didn't know who I was anymore. Not a wife, not a cheater, not a victim, not a villain, just a woman left alone, with a silence she chose. But that wasn't the worst part. The worst part came 3 days later, when my husband came back. After that night, everything felt different, but nothing looked different. I made breakfast, like I always did, answered calls, did the laundry, laughed at things that weren't funny. But inside me, something was broken, and not the loud, obvious kind of broken, the quiet kind. The kind that just sits there waiting to be noticed, tuned, stopped coming by, no texts, no check-ins, nothing. He disappeared as quietly as he entered, and part of me was relieved, but a bigger part felt abandoned, exposed, like I'd been left holding a secret I didn't ask to carry. Deo returned on Sunday night, same suitcase, same tired face, same half hug in the hallway. He kissed my cheek, asked how the weekend went. I said, It was fine, and I smiled, but my lips trembled before they curved. I don't think he noticed, or maybe he did and didn't want to ask, but he kept asking after that. Little questions, soft, subtle. Are you okay? Is something wrong? Did something happen while I was away? I lied over and over again, with my eyes, with my voice, with my silence, but I couldn't meet his gaze. Every time he looked at me for too long, I looked down or away or past him, because all I could think about was that night, that door, that breath, that gaze, and how it changed. The shape of everything at night. The silence grew, teeth. I started having nightmares. Not violent, just unsettling dreams, where Deo stood outside our house knocking, but he couldn't open the door, or dreams where Tund was there again in the hallway saying, nothing, just watching. I'd wake up sweaty cold, shaking and lie there, beside the man I married, unable to touch him, unable to be touched, because now every time Deo reached for me, I froze. I couldn't kiss him without feeling Ton's absence in the room, couldn't lie beneath him without remembering the weight of Eamon who never even touched me. One evening I heard Deo on the phone. He was in the study door, halfway closed, his voice, low, steady, concerned. Then I heard the name Tund. My whole body locked. I pressed myself against the wall, like a killed eavesdropping on a truth too big to carry. I couldn't hear what was said, just pauses, long ones, like silence was doing. Most of the talking. He came out later, didn't mention the call, didn't look different, didn't say a word. But I felt it something had shifted in him and me. The space between us, the unraveling, wasn't fast, it was slow, like a thread being tugged gently until everything lost shape. I cooked, but I didn't taste is mild. But I didn't feel. I laid in bed beside him, but my body stayed curled on the edge, and every time he kissed me, all I could hear was another man's breath in the room. Some nights I lie awake and ask myself the same question, over and over. Did I cheat, or did I just shatter something inside me that was already cracked? I didn't touch him, he didn't touch me, but I let him see too much. I let him into a space that wasn't his space, that used to belong to my husband before it became a storage room for silence and unmet needs. Is that still cheating? When it's emotional, when it's unspoken, when the body stays loyal, but the soul strays. I don't know. What I do know is that I haven't been the same since that night, not because of what happened, but because of what it woke up in me. I used to think loneliness was just a feeling, something you brushed off, filled with chores, responsibilities, errands, sleep. But loneliness is a slow-burning hunger. It starts small, quiet moments of being overlooked, a forgotten kiss, a missed compliment, a hand that never reaches for yours in the dark. Then it grows. You stop expecting, you stop asking, and eventually you stop hoping. That's where I was when Tund started. Showing up, he didn't come with promise. He came with presence. He listened. He nodded. He remembered things my husband forgot years ago. And I let that be enough, more than enough, too much. The shame came quickly, but the guilt stayed. I replay that night, constantly, not for pleasure, not to live it, but to understand it, to figure out why it felt like both a sin and a rescue, why something so wrong felt in that moment, like oxygen. I wonder if Dio knows, if Tone told him, if something in my silence gave me away, a glance too long, a breath held too tightly, a kiss that didn't land. Sometimes I think it would be easier if he did. Now, if it all just came out loud and ugly and undeniable, but instead, I live in this in-between, where the truth is mine alone, where no one's asking, but everything feels answered. I thought I'd be relieved if he never found out. But silence is its own kind of punishment. It doesn't scream, It doesn't accuse. It just lingers, stains. Everything soft turns, even kindness into suspicion. And the hardest part, I don't even know who I'm grieving. The man I betrayed or the woman I used to be, before I let someone else's eyes become a mirror and saw myself for the first time in a very long time. Have you ever made a choice? Not because you wanted to, but because you were starving for something you couldn't name. Not lust, not love, just attention, presence, a moment that made you feel like you existed. Again, have you ever found yourself in excellence so loud you'd do anything to fill it, even if it meant breaking something sacred? I didn't plan, it didn't chase it, but I didn't stop it either. So tell me, was I wrong for letting happen? Or was I just a woman lost in her own silence? A silence that had lived in my house for years, that slept beside me, that knew my name, but hadn't said it softly in so long. Speak, balloon, if you've ever been here in this quiet place, where right and wrong blur. Tell me your stories, your regrets, your truths. I read every single one, not to judge, but to feel less alone, because stories like this, they don't always get told out loud, but they live in people. And maybe you've been carrying one, too. This story touched something in you. Subscribe to Heartfelt Tales. Unfold where silence turns into stories too heavy to carry alone. Tap the bell, because the next one it might feel uncomfortably familiar. Some betrayals don't begin with touch. They begin with being seen too deeply by someone who isn't yours. And sometimes the deepest damage isn't loud. It doesn't scream. It doesn't demand, it just waits in the space between two people who should have reached for each other, but didn't. The night I left the door open, it wasn't just a door. It was a part of me, cracked, willing, unspoken. And even now, I don't know if I'll ever tell my husband, but to tell myself every day that I was more than that moment. Even if it's the only one I can't forget, be careful what you'll do, even when it feels harmless.